So let's talk about managing groups. Now that we've got an idea about how we can add and manage users, let's talk about how we can manage groups. Now, before we do, let's talk about why we want to manage groups. So, we manage groups for the same reason that we do in any other platform. We do it to simplify access to resources. So let's say I can create a file or a directory and I want to give multiple people access to it. Then what I can do is I can add people to the group and give the group access, and then anyone who's in the group gets that access to that particular file or folder. Let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to do an ls-l, and I want to do this on the home directory, just so I can see everything that's in the home directory. And you see here, I've got two different folders. Now, ignore this first block of information. I want you to go over on this first file. Let's look at our first name. It says David. Okay. And then the second one is M. Maxwell. So the first one is the user that's assigned to this particular file or folder. The second one is the group that is assigned to this particular file or folder. Now, this is different from Windows Server. In Windows Server, I can have multiple different groups that have access to a particular file, folder, or system resource. In Linux, I can have one, sort of. But I'm going to have one primary one associated with it. So think of it this way. We have a user who owns it, and then we have a group who owns it or is associated with it. As associated is probably better than saying it's an owner. So ignore the rest. So we're going to come back to the rest of the information on here when we start looking at permissions here in a little while. But for the moment, I want you to see how we can identify which group is associated with which user. Okay, how can I discover what groups are in my system? Well, I can do a cat /etc/group, and this will show me all the groups on my system. Let me do that again and pipe that through more. So here you're going to see this more function. You see here are all of our groups, and you're going to see very similar a little bit to the way we looked at users in the etc password. So we're going to have the group name. Let's look at this bottom one down here. The group name. The second one with the X is a group password. And now we actually don't use group passwords because that can create some security issues. So we're going to leave that alone. The next one, that 46 here, is the group ID. So we have the group name, the group password, the group ID, all of these separated by colons. And then after that last one, that fourth field is going to be all of the users. Let's take a look at this admin one here. This is going to be a little bit better to look at. So ADM is the group. It has no password. It's group ID 4. And notice we have two users associated with it, syslog and David. So all of your users that are part of that group are going to be identified with commas separating out the users. Okay. Now, that shows me all my groups. If I want to see which groups I am currently a member of, I can issue the command groups. And it will tell me David is a member of the David group, which is my primary group. ADM, CD-ROM, sudo dip, plugdev, and XLD. So those are all the groups that I'm a member of. If I want to look at somebody else, let me look at groups for M. Maxwell. And they're a member of the M. Maxwell group, and that's it. Okay, so that's how I can tell which groups I have on my system and what groups a particular user account is a member of. Now, what if I wanted to create a new group? Well, it's fairly straightforward. It's sudo group add, and then we're going to create the group name. So I'm going to create a group named sales. And that will create my sales group for me once I put in my password. And I can verify that by issuing the command, cat etc group, pipe that to grep sales, and there is my sales group. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Now, what if I want to add somebody to the user, to add a user to that group? So our command is going to be usermod. So we have user add to add a user, userdel to delete a user. To modify a user, the command is usermod. And this is the command. It's sudo usermod. And then I'm going to set the options. And I want -a capital G. Now, let's talk about what this is. -a means append. Capital G means append to a secondary group. And if I did the lowercase g, that would change the user, or append the user's primary group, and a user can be part of a primary group. If I don't use the append, then it wipes out the group membership of the user and replaces it with whatever I set. So then I'm going to set the group that I want the user to be a member of, and then the user name that I want this to apply to. M. Maxwell. Okay, so a couple of things that I want to show you here. Let's start by doing usermod -h. So this will show me all the things I can change with usermod. And remember, it's command, options, and then whatever object you're running that on. So in this case, a login account. Now, I did a -a, which is to append, and you see append the user to a supplemental group. Capital G is a list of supplementary groups. Lowercase g turns it into a primary group. So I want to make sure I get the right one. Now, I could have done usermod -a-g, but the operating system will allow me to do a single dash and then just pile all of my options together like that. Now, let's see if it took effect. Two ways that I can look at it, remember. I'm going to do sudo etc, cat etc group. And here's my sales, which now has M Maxwell. I can also do groups M Maxwell. And that will show me that Maxwell is now part of the sales group as well as the M Maxwell group. Okay, what if I want to take permissions away? I want to remove a user from a group. All right. To that, I'm going to use the usermod, and I am just going to remove that group membership. But there's another way to do it as well. So usermod is one. Let's look at the other one, though, and that is using gpasswd. So this is what this command is going to look like. Sudo gpasswd, or passwd, and then I'm going to give it the function that I want is to remove or delete a group membership. So it's going to be -d to delete the group membership. And then I'm going to put the username, M Maxwell, and then the group that I want to remove them from. So sales. And that removes them from sales. Now, usermod and the gpasswd here I can use to accomplish the same thing. Usermod modifies the user by appending them to a secondary group. Gpasswd modifies the group by adding or removing an existing user. So, real quick, let's do gpasswd-h, and you can see our options here. Add a user, delete a user. All right. View members. So, I want to add user back in, just using the gpasswd so we can see how it works. So it's sudo gpasswd-a to add a user, and the user I want to add is M Maxwell, and I want to add Maxwell to the group sales. And there we go. Okay, so I have created a group. I have added users to the group. I've deleted users from a group using a couple of different tools. Now, the other thing I'm going to want to be able to do is remove a group. So, we did group add to create it, just like we did user add to add a user, user del to delete a user, group add to create a group, group del to delete a group. And that will remove the group. Now, I can verify that works by, let's do two things. Let's do cat etc group, pipe that to grep sales, and sales doesn't exist. I can also see that, remember, Maxwell was a member of that group when we deleted it, so I can look at groups for Maxwell and see that Maxwell is no longer a member of the sales group. Okay, there you go. A quick overview of managing groups in Ubuntu Server.